In this video we're going to create an awesome looking construction shader effect. It's an excellent effect for any game with construction like a tower defense or RTS games. It will also teach you how to be clever when working with shader graph in order to make some more complex effects. Let's begin! Alright, so here let's check out the awesome construction shader effect. So here I am in my demo scene, and I have a simple building manager implemented. So as I press the button, yep, there you go, a building gets placed and it starts being constructed. It looks like the building is slowly being printed into reality. It gets created line by line, and after a while, yep, the whole building is done. And this is a real nice shader effect, so it's applicable to any visual. So this is a wood harvester, now let's place a stone harvester, and yep, there you go, line by line, looks really cool. And over here, let's place a gold harvester, and yep, there you go, you can see that the effect looks really awesome. So it works with any sprite, there you go, a nice tower, and over there, a nice HQ. And yep, it prints really satisfying left to right, and yep, there you go, it looks awesome. So this is the effect, which is also easily customizable with a whole bunch of parameters. So the main one is over here, the number of segments. So this is how many vertical segments there are. So if I put this with just 2, yep, there you go, it prints the bottom part and then the top part. I can put it at 10 to get a nice amount, or I can put it at 30 to look really insane. So very customizable. Then you can also change the color of the printing head. So instead of blue, let's make it a green, make it a nice orange, red, and so on. And we can also change the thickness of the colors. Instead of 0.01, let's make it 0.02. There you go, it's a bit bigger and quite a lot bigger. And yep, just like that. Lastly, you can also play around with this texture in order to get some different shapes. So this one goes left to right. And now this one is going from the center to all the sides. And this one going outside back in. So as you can see, the whole effect is really customizable with tons of parameters. Now, by the way, I also use this exact effect in my course for the Builder Defender game. The course is 10 hours long with over 50 lectures nicely organized into distinct topics. It teaches you everything on how to make a game, starting completely from scratch until the final polished game. The lectures are presented as clear step-by-step tutorials, just like my normal videos. It teaches you how to make a building system, resource management, enemy AI, world building, post-processing, polish, and much, much more. So if you're looking for a guided step-by-step course on making a complete game from start to finish, then check the link in the description to pick up the course. Alright, so this is our goal. Let's get to it. Okay, so let's begin by making our shader. Now in the shaders folder, just right click, go into create. We're going to create a new shader, and in this case go into the 2D renderer and make a sprite-like graph. Let's name it the construction effect and just open it. Alright, so here we are in shader graph. Now if you're not familiar with shader graph, go watch my getting started video first. It's linked in the description. Now we're going to begin with a texture just so we can see it in action. So let's begin by making a texture 2D, name it our main text, reference underscore main text. Then let's default it to the building texture. And now let's drag it in here. Then we simply sample it and pass the RGBA over there onto the colors and change the preview into a quad. Alright, so we have our basic shader. Now let's just hit on save asset. Then over here on the scene view, let's simply make a sprite with a sprite. Okay, there it is. And now let's make a material. So by the way, here's a quick tip. Instead of right clicking on the folder and creating a material, right click on top of the actual shader. So right click, create, and go in here and create a material, and automatically uses our shader. So let's name this our construction effect. Then on the sprite itself, let's use this material. Alright, so far so good. We have a sprite and it's using our custom shader. Now let's continue. Now in order to achieve our effect of showing the construction happening going from one side to the other, one thing we're going to need is a gradient texture. So let's add a new texture to the field. Let's call it the progress texture. And here on the default, I have a texture I made previously. And here it is, it's just a very simple gradient. So it's fully black on this side and fully red on this side. Now it's red simply because we're only going to be using the red channel. So in reality, this is simply a texture going from 0 to 1. So there it is, very simple. Now we're going to take the red colored channel. And now the one key thing that we're going to do here is we're going to add a step node. So what this does is it steps through our texture and only shows values under a certain amount. So since our texture is going from left to right, over here with 0 and over here with 1, as we increase over here on the input, you can see that increases going from left to right. So this essentially is the basis for the whole system. It's just a gradient texture and a step node. Now let's make a property for this step value. So create a new one. This will be a vector1, so essentially just a float. Let's name it our progress. And here let's change the mode and make it into a slider, going from 0 to 1. Okay, so far so good. And then just drag it in here, and this is the one that we use in here. So we have our texture we sample it, and then we do a step node and use the progress. So let's put this at something like 0.4. And yep, we can see this is 40% filled. All right, so with this, let's simply apply it to our texture alpha. So let's take all these. Let's here add a multiply node. So we're going to take the original alpha, there it is, that one, and we multiply it by this one, and there you go, this is the shape that we get. So we take this, and then let's add a combine node, and we're going to take the original red, the original green, and the original blue, and just use this alpha, and then use this RGBA in there. And yep, there you go, we already have that effect. Now in this case, since this is a construction effect, personally I like this to have a bit of a different color. So one easy way to do it is simply delete the red, and there you go, now it gets a slightly bluish color. So personally I prefer this since it makes it more clear that the sprite is being constructed. But if you wanted, you could also take all of them and apply a simple tint. But in this case, like this, it looks pretty good. So we have a progress texture, then we're applying a simple node based on what's on the progress variable, and then we simply take that, we multiply it with the original alpha, we combine it with the colors while ignoring the red, and we simply use that on the color. Alright, so let's see how it looks like this. And yep, over there we can already see our effect in action. So down here we have the progress slider. So as we move it in there, it's all fully empty, and as we slightly increase it, yep, there you go, it gets printed from left to right. Alright, so we already have a really nice base for our effect. Awesome. Okay, so what we have here is essentially just a single segment working. Now for the final effect, we want to split the sprite into multiple vertical segments. So back in the shader here, let's think of exactly how can we make some segments. Now here you need to think in terms of discrete operations rather than thinking of the whole final effect. So first of all, these segments are meant to be placed vertically. Essentially, if we have two segments, then first we want to fill the bottom half of the sprite, and then we want to fill the top half. So that tells us that essentially we're going to need a vertical gradient. So let's make that. Now one approach is we could make a different texture going from the bottom to the top. So that would work, but would require us to make a completely different texture. However, we can do that more easily by just rotating this texture that we already have. So let's duplicate these nodes along with the step. So just hit Ctrl D in order to duplicate them. Alright, here they are. And now in here we can add a rotate node. So there you go, this outputs the UV which we connect in there. So like this, it still looks exactly the same, but over here we can apply something on the rotation. So as this one increases, yep, we have our gradient increasing. So now here you can probably tell that the value is set in radians. So at 0 it's going left to right, and as I approach about 1.38, it's going from bottom to the top. So in our case we want a 90-degree rotation. So in radians, as you know, pointing to the right we've got 0, and pointing to the left we've got pi, and the full circle is 2 pi. So in our case we want just a 90-degree rotation, so we want pi divided by 2, which is 1.5707 and so on. Alright, so just like this we have a perfect 90-degree rotation. So by modifying the progress in there, yep, there you go, that one goes from left to right and that one from bottom to the top. Now again, let's think of what we need in order to achieve our goal. Now for this one up here, we do want it to go smoothly from left to right. However, in this one down here, we want it to transition between distinct states rather than smoothly moving from one to the other. So in order to do that, let's first define a property for the number of segments. So we create another one, again a vector1, so just a normal float. Let's call it our segments. And here let's set it to 2 segments. And now in here we want to split this into the number of segments based on the current progress. So that means that we need to convert the current progress, which is a normalized value going from 0 to 1. We need to convert that into the scale of these segments. So we simply add a multiply node and we multiply the current progress by the actual number of segments. So if the progress is set to 1, then the output in here will be the same as the amount of segments. And if it's at 0.5, then we have half the segments and so on. However, in here, this step node takes a normalized value. So we have to normalize that value in there. And we do that by using the divide node. And we divide this value by the actual number of segments. And then we connect this one onto that one. Okay, so it seems like we end up pretty much in the same place where we started. However, now let's think about what this is doing. Now in here we are multiplying the progress by the number of segments, and then we are normalizing that value. So in order to get the strict values, we can simply add a floor node in between these two. So just push this one to the right, add a floor node, and we're simply going to floor this value. So we take this one, we take a floor, and then we connect to the divide, and just like that. And yep, with this now the step node is indeed working. So as the progress is at 0, then that one is fully on 0, and that one is also on 0. And as the progress increases, like let's say at 0.3, That one smoothly increases to 0.3, but that one does not move. That one is split into two segments. So even if I put on 0.49, the floor is still 0, so it's still on the very first segment. And only as I increase to 0.5, does it, yep, indeed, it fills up that one. And as I go up to 0.9, yep, still with that one. And as I go up to 1, yep, now it's fully filled. Alright, so with this we have now implemented discrete vertical segments. Awesome. Now we really just need to combine this with our left and right motion. So let's get a bit more space, just push all of this more to the side. Alright. Now in order to combine these two, again remember that shader effects are really all just about numbers and basic operations. So what we have here is just a bunch of ones and a bunch of zeros, and over here a bunch of zeros and a bunch of ones. So if we want to combine these, we just add a very simple multiply node. So we multiply this one by this one, and yep, we have our combined output. So here we have already successfully introduced segments onto the vertical bar. However, we have not added them to the horizontal bar. What we want is for this one to go from left to right as many times as the number of segments. So right now it only goes from left to right once as we increase the progress down to 1. However, with 2 segments, then it should be essentially completely filled at 0.5, then reset back to the left side, and as it increases for another 0.5, it should fill up again. So let's do that. Now in order to do this, it is very simple with a basic modulo operation. So we add a modulo node. Now if you're not familiar with modulo, it is simply the remainder of the division. So we do a modulo of the progress, and in this case we're going to want to do it with 0.5. And then we simply add a multiply node and we multiply this output by the number of segments. Alright, so there it is. So now essentially when the progress is, let's say, at 0.1, yep, there you go, it only fills up a tiny bit. And as that one approaches 0.5, so at 0.4, yep, it's almost full. And as it goes into 0.5, yep, there you go, it resets back. And as it goes up to 0.99, there you go, it's completely full again. So now as the progress goes from 0 to 1, this one is going to fill in exactly 2 times, which is the number of segments. Now here we are doing a modulo of 0.5, since we just have 2 segments, so the correct value is just 1 divided by the number of segments. So just add a divide node and divide 1 by the number of segments, and this is what we use in there. Alright, so our logic is looking good. Over here we have a horizontal bar that goes from left to right as many times as the number of segments that we have. So we have that, and then we combine both of them, and then this output really is what goes over there onto the alpha. Now over here we still have one issue, which is that if the progress is under 0.5, so let's say at 0.4, yep, there you go, that one is working correctly. However, this one is completely empty. So right now the logic is fully working, but it's only working after the first segment. So if I put this at 0.6, it does work correctly. So what we need is to have this one, and then to have another one that goes 1 segment ahead. So let's make another step node for the vertical, and we use this red channel. Okay, good. Except for the input on this one, we essentially just want to add another segment. So let's make an add node, and we're going to take the output from here, and we're simply going to add another segment, so just 1 divided by segment. So just copy this one, add onto that one, and use this one in there. Alright, so yep, there it is. So now we have this one down here that is 1 segment ahead of this one. So as this one is at, let's say, at 0.4, that one is empty, that one is half full, and as this one reaches, let's say, 0.6, this one is full and this one is half full. And if we use more segments, all of the logic still works, so let's say 5 segments, and there you go, that one is always 1 ahead of that one. So at 0.6, then at 0.4, and so on, and yep, the logic works perfectly. However, like this, we still have one issue, which is that even if we were to use this one, which goes 1 segment ahead, alright, that one works good. So if we go up to 0.49, yep, it's working good, it's filling in the first one. But if we go to 0.6, and there you go, it completely eliminated the bottom segment. What we want is to only apply the left to right motion on the topmost segment. So the bottom one is supposed to be visible at all times. So you can see what's happening right now if we save the shader. And here we are, and we have our progress, and there you go. As we increase, and as we go up to 0.5, yep, there you go, it looks good. It's printing the first half of the building. And as we go to 0.5, yep, there you go, it goes back, and now it's printing both segments at once. So again, what we want is to really only use the last segment when applying the horizontal movement. So back in the shader here, doing that is actually quite simple. So we have this one, which is, as you remember, 1 segment above of this one. So it's always 1 ahead. And again, remember that shaders are all about simple mathematical operations. So if we just want the top one, then we can simply take this shape and subtract this shape. So just go in here, add a subtract, and we're going to take the one that is completely filled. We take the one that is one behind, and there you go, we only have the top. So then this is the one that we apply in there in order to multiply. So now as that one is at, let's say, 0.4, yep, it's printing the bottom segment. And as it goes up to 0.6, yep, now it's printing the top segment. So now again, we just need to leave this one as the same as before. So we just take these two, okay, and then we have an add node, and we're going to add the topmost shape and combine it with the bottommost shape. And yep, there it is. Now we have that effect, and connect this one in there, and now we can actually see it in action. So let's save the asset. And over here at 0, everything is empty. As we increase, yep, starts increasing the bottom segment. And as we go past 0.5, yep, there you go. Now it's increasing the top segment. So there you go. Yep, the effect is working perfectly. And again, we made this all really nice, really dynamic based on this number of segments. So if we add this to, let's say, 10 segments, and as we increase, yep, there you go. You can see our effect is constantly printing. So it is really starting to take shape. All right, awesome. So with this, the effect is already working. It's constructing the building line by line. However, the issue is that it always goes straight from left to right. It would look better if it constructed from the left, and then on the second one go from the right, and then from the left, and so on. All right, so let's do just that. So back in the shader here, what we're going to do is over here we have our horizontal logic, and we're essentially just going to duplicate this. So just click Ctrl D, duplicate all of these. All right, good. So using the same texture, all right, everything looks good. So we do the exact same thing using a step node and all this logic. All of that is good. However, in this case, we want the texture to go the other way. So once again, we have the option that we could make a separate texture going from right to left, or once again, we can play around in the UV. So one approach could be by doing the rotation and rotate by pi, but let's look at a different approach. So let's add a tiling and offset node. So we connect this one in there, and over here we change the offset on the X to -1. And now we see an issue that everything is set to black. So let's go into the texture import settings for this texture. So here it is, my construction progress texture. And down here we have a really nice wrap mode. And by default it's set to clamp, but we have all of these options. And in this case, instead of clamp, let's choose mirror. And if we hit apply and go back into the shader, and yep, there it is. Now we have from right to left. So as we modify the offset, you can see that the actual texture shape is mirroring. So -1 makes it perfect. All right, so just like this, we have this step node going from left to right, and this one from right to left. So as we increase the progress, let's put it at quite a bit. Let's put it at 0.1. There you go, just that one. Let's put it at 0.2. And yep, it increased like that, 0.3. And yep, there it is. So that one left to right, that one right to left. All right, so now all that's left to do is add some logic in order to use either this one, and then combine it with this one. So we can add that logic by making even lines go left to right, and odd lines go right to left. So to test if it's an odd or even line, let's add some nodes here. So first, let's take a multiply node and multiply the progress by the number of segments. All right, so we have the full value rather than the normalized value. So we do this, then we floor it. So in order to make it a whole number, and then we add a modulo node, and we're going to take this and make a modulo of 2. So the end result in here will be 0 if the line is even and 1 if it's odd. So for example, if we are on the third segment, so the output in here will be, let's say 3.4. We're 40% on the third segment. Then we floor it, so 3.4 becomes 3. And then we do a modulo, so you do 3 divided by 2, and the remainder of that division is 1. So that one is an odd segment. So we have this logic, and then we add a comparison node. So this one is really useful. We take this one, we compare it with the A, and we're going to compare the A with 0. So again, this will either output either 0 or 1. So we have this one, we test if it's equal, okay, and out here we have a Boolean output. And then we can add a branch node. So this one takes a Boolean, and then essentially what this does is if this one is true, then the output will be what is received in here, and if it's false, it outputs this one. So yep, that's exactly what we want. So over here we put the left one if it's true, and we put the right one if it's false. Then we take these two and we put it on the multiply. All right, so that's it. Let's save the shader and test. And okay, here's the building, and we have our progress at 0, okay. And as we start increasing, yep, it goes from left to right. And as we reach to the right side, yep, there you go, the second line goes right to left, and then left to right to left to right, and so on. All right, so here we have our really nice logic all perfectly working. Awesome. All right, with this we have almost a complete effect. By the way, I have a simple script here that we can use to test. So here is a script, very simple. We just have a float progress and it's constantly increasing. And by the way, this is how you assign properties to a certain value. So the shader has a property with the name _progress. So here it is, we can see progress with reference _progress. So this is how we set it. We call setFloat, give it the name, and give it the value. And yep, over here we can see our shader in action. So it goes right to left, left to right, and so on. And yep, it's already looking very nice. All right, so this is almost a complete effect. It does indeed construct the building in a really nice way. Now let's take this to the next level and add a really nice glowing printing head. Adding that is actually extremely simple. What we have to do is essentially just duplicate all of these nodes. So let's grab all of these and hit Ctrl D to duplicate and drag them all down here. All right, so we have the exact same logic up here and down here. Now, the one thing we're going to change down here is we're going to add a tiny amount to the progress value. So let's make that tiny amount a property. Let's call it the head thickness. We're going to use a really tiny value. So with this, you can already guess where this is going. We're going to go here where we have our progress, and we just make an add node, and we add the progress, and we add it by this very tiny amount. So we do this and then output it in there. So now we just need to apply this logic wherever we're using the progress. So down here, we're using it the same. So let's bring it down here, remove this one and connect this one. Okay. Then down here, we also have progress. All right, that's it. And the last one is all the way up here. So once again, just copy this one and put it in there. All right, so essentially what we have is that all of the logic down here is a tiny, tiny bit ahead of all the logic up here. So now we can just add a simple subtract node, and we're going to take the output from this one, which is a tiny bit ahead, and we subtract it to this one, which is a tiny bit behind, and we combine those two. And with this, we get just a tiny sliver of the shape of the head. So in here, let's switch the segments from 2 to 10 so we can see. And yep, there you go, just like that. So now we have this. Now let's just multiply it by a simple color. So let's make another property for a color, for the head color. And here on the mode, let's make it HDR so we got a real nice glow. And then give it something like, let's say, a blue, and give it some intensity. All right, so we take this color, then we simply add a multiply node, multiply this head to this color. And then all we need is another add node, and we add the head onto it. All right, so there it is. Now let's save it. And yep, there it is. We have our printing head looking really awesome. So there you go, constantly increasing, and the head is constantly at the edge. And of course we have our property, so let's say increase the head thickness. And there you go, now it's much more massive. And like this, it's much more tiny. So there you go, very easily customizable. And of course we can also modify the color. So let's make it a nice green. There you go, nice orange. And yep, there it is. It looks pretty awesome. All right, so with this, everything is working. As the progress increases, it constructs the building in a very satisfying way. So it prints left to right, segment by segment, and there's a really nice glowing printing head. And also the other parameters still exist. So for example, over here on the segments, let's say 10 segments is too much. Let's put it just 2, and there you go, it goes just split in 2. Let's put it in 3, and yep, we've got it in 3. Let's put it in 30, and there you go, it's a really insane printer. So you can see how this final effect is really, really nicely and customizable. So lastly, I'm just going to apply this to a bunch of buildings. So all it really takes is really just applying the same material. So over here, I have a simple prefab that I can easily spawn. And all I need to do is just apply that material, and yep, there you go. And now if you run this, so here I am, and I have a simple building manager. So as I click, yep, there you go, it starts printing the building. And after a few seconds, the whole building gets printed. And yep, there you go, it spawns the actual building. So there's a wood harvester, and over there we've got a stone harvester, then a gold harvester, and then we have a nice tower, and a real nice HQ. And there you go, you can see the effect looks really, really nice. So they all get built, they all get spawned, and they all look really great. So here it is, the final effect. It looks excellent, and it's perfectly suited for just about any game with some construction. Now again, this shader was originally created for the Complete Builder Defender course, so if you want to see how this is used as part of a complete game, go check out the course linked in the description. It teaches you everything on how to make a game, starting completely from scratch until the final polished game. If you found this video helpful, consider liking and subscribing. As always, you can download the project files and utilities from unitycodemonkey.com. This video is made possible thanks to these awesome supporters. Go to patreon.com/unitycodemonkey to get some perks and help keep the videos free for everyone. Subscribe to the channel for more Unity tutorials, post any questions, have any comments, and I'll see you next time.